Welcome to this edition of Training in Business Immigration, brought to you by the law firm of Graham Adair. I'm Chad Graham, joined by my partner, Sam Adair. Sam, you ready for this?
Let's do it, man. I can't wait to dive in.
All right. So today's topic is the Visa Bulletin, which we have a love-hate relationship. It's the topic we love to hate. Um, Sam, what is the Visa Bulletin?
The Visa Bulletin is a report that's published every month by the Department of State, and it controls when individuals will be eligible to apply for their immigrant visa or permanent resident status. So it's a really critical document. Immigration lawyers and people who are in the green card process look for it every month because it really determines when they're going to be able to finally move forward and finish out that permanent residence application process.
All right, so we're talking about green cards. No wonder this is such a critical topic for everyone. So then, looking at the Visa Bulletin, how is it actually calculated?
So every year there are 675,000 green cards that can be issued. That's a congressionally set number. And of those 675,000, 140,000 are available for individuals who are pursuing permanent residence based on their employment or employment-based applications. Those 140,000 are then subdivided out based on country of birth and employment-based preference categories, so EB1, EB2, EB3. And then the Department of State uses a formula and aggregates data from USCIS and from all of its consulates to figure out how many applications are in the pipeline and who is going to be eligible to move forward based on what's known as their priority date or when they started the green card process. So it's a really critical document, has a lot of impact on people's lives, and it seems like there's a very mathematical system in place to sort of figure out what the future is supposed to look like.
Okay, great. So we're sitting here at the end of April, but we have the May Visa Bulletin because each month's Visa Bulletin comes out a little early to give people time to prepare for the following month. So then looking at the May Visa Bulletin, what are you seeing?
The biggest news to take away from the May Visa Bulletin is that the demand for green cards is unexpectedly high, I would say. We're seeing retrogression in categories where we typically don't expect to see it. And so let's kind of dive in and we'll talk about some of the specifics in each of those categories. In the EB1 employment-based first preference category, we're seeing retrogression for both India and China that dates back to February 1st of 2022. For all other countries in the world, that category is current, which is good news. But for India and China, there's going to be a little bit of a delay to move forward with that final stage of the green card process. In EB2, we're seeing additional retrogression for both China and India. China goes back to June of 2019. India goes all the way back to January 1st of 2011. Chad, I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of specific memories that go all the way back to January of 2011. The rest of the world, all other countries, are also retrogressed in EB2 going back to February 15th of 2022. And that's what's really kind of unusual, I think, is that we're seeing this additional retrogression for all other countries in the EB2 category. Lastly, as we look at EB3, China's retrogressed to April of 2019, while India pushes back to June 15th of 2012. All other countries are looking at June 1st of 2022. So again, just very high demand, which is leading to these delays in people being eligible to move forward with that final stage of the green card process.
Okay, so at the risk of being deemed soothsayers, Sam, let's go get your crystal ball and talk about what we see in the future for each of the categories. Let's look at EB1 specifically. You know, thinking about the rest of this year and potentially in the beginning of the next fiscal year, what are you seeing for EB1?
Please don't hold me to any of these predictions. We are basing our sort of notes here on what we're seeing from the Department of State, what they're indicating in their notes on the Visa Bulletin. In EB1, we anticipate that there will likely be further retrogression for both India and China because of increased demand in the category and increased anticipated demand in the EB1 preference category. So that will likely mean that we'll see the dates move further back for India and China as the rest of this fiscal year rolls forward.
Okay, EB2?
Well, again, I'm not going to be very popular, I don't think, because of what I'm about to say, but the Department of State is indicating that the demand for EB2 has been higher across the board than expected, and that's going to likely lead to further retrogression, especially for India as we go through the rest of this fiscal year. The Department of State has gone so far as to say that they hope that they're going to be able to move the numbers back to where they are on October 1st to what the numbers were in the April Visa Bulletin. So we're likely to see a real move backwards for the next 4 or 5 months. And then the hope is on October 1st, we'll be back to kind of the footing where we were in April of 2023. So not a great outlook in terms of that category.
All right, so we're all feeling a little bit down, Sam. Let's finish it up. Tell us about EB3.
Well, let's talk about EB3. I think this is one area where maybe comparatively the news is relatively hopeful. The Department of State is indicating that they don't anticipate further retrogression in the EB3 category. So while they're not indicating that those dates are likely to move forward, at least those dates may hold. And if that's the case, the hope is those dates will hold until the end of September. And then on October 1st, when the new numbers come into the system, we could see some forward progress in the EB3 category in that new fiscal year.
So we've gotten to the end of sort of the bad news. We want people to feel good and excited as they watch our videos. We don't want people to feel down. Is there a positive note we can end on here, Sam?
My general thought here is that while we are seeing kind of what I would consider to be a low point in terms of where the Visa Bulletin is today, over the last 15 years or so, we've seen these numbers kind of ebb and flow. And the hope is as we go into the new fiscal year, we'll start to see some improvement. Now, Chad, I think one of the biggest things that could really help this would be congressional action. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on how likely we are to see some congressional movement to maybe free up additional numbers or to allocate these numbers a little differently.
Well, I would say the good news there is that Congress does seem to be aware of the issue. And one of the things that they have been talking about, and I've heard this come up more often recently, is these per country limits, where each country can have no more than 7% of those 140,000. And so, looking at India specifically, but also China and some other countries in different categories, where the demand exceeds that and the line starts to form. And for India, EB2, for example, gets really long. If they were to remove those per country limits, you would see sort of a, think about like water levels. When you remove that limit, then all of a sudden it would kind of come together. India would move up significantly. The rest of the world might come down a bit as well. But that's one of those things where you could see some of the categories where it's like, a 12-year wait, really see some forward movement. So that's something to keep an eye on. But really, that 140,000 number is something they need to look at, either to raise the number or to be better about recapturing unused numbers in other individual categories and make those available to the employment-based group where the wait is so long. Would be something that would be great to see. I don't know, I would say something that would happen in the near future, but if you are seeing an EB2 India and you're thinking 12 years, it might not be that long. Hopefully we'll see some action that could help the folks in that situation.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else, Sam?
Nothing else for me. I know that this is a lot of bad news, especially if you're looking at this from one of the India preference categories, but we've seen movement forward over the years, and I hope that we'll continue to see that as we go forward.
Fantastic. On that note, we'll wrap up. Thanks for joining us. See y'all next time.